We'll go through some of the different parts of our cover crop tool selector. I sit on the Midwest Cover Crops Council, and I'm Ohio State's rep for that. And so we have a partnership with Midwest Cover Crops Council where there's a selector tool. That tool has went through a new update. So I will tell you, my precursor is, there will be some changes to what is in my presentation after March 20th. So they're releasing the newest version. And so this version is about 10 years old. The numbers that are located in the cover crop tool selector will be changed to match the newest research we have with those seeding rates. A few caveats when we look through that calculator. If you are doing different programs such as Equip or the new H2 Ohio, and there are limitations, this is for using cover crops, not based on those programs. So please understand those seeding rates sometimes are less and sometimes are more, but they're research based where those cover crops will establish. And so please realize that with the cover crop tool selector. I'm going to also show you some other resources. This is for a lot of first-time users with cover crops, and what do I even do and how do I get started with that? So a few things. There are some smaller, if you are working outside of agriculture or maybe in some gardening situations, there is a cover crop for pollinators handout through SARE that's available. I know there were some out there in the chapel that we have free copies of, but if you go to SARE, Sustainable Ag Research Education Organization, you can download that, or again, there are copies out there. Another thing that I will tell you is the background and the backbone of this cover crop tool selector is the Managing Cover Crops Profitably. That version is the third version. That's the newest one. It has built, realize this is a publication for the entire United States. So it has the best information. If you need a little more than what is in that cover crop tool selector, you can get those. A lot of the SARE booths have those for free, but they are $20 to purchase those if you go through National SARE. And then the second guide, the second edition of the Cover Crops Field Guide, also ties into that cover crop tool selector. If you are not internet savvy and you just want some basics, that Cover Crops Field Guide, it's very easy to carry. It's small. It fits in a shirt pocket, a pants pocket. Again, those are $5.50. I do have some available. Most of our county extension office, they'll have a few copies, or they can get a hold of those. Or you can order them through the Purdue Extension store. This is for a 12-state area, and so it covers 12 states with those seeding rates. So this cover crop tool selector that I will talk to you about is housed at Michigan State, and so the Midwest Cover Crop Council is 12 states plus Ontario. Every year we have grants that we work on to further research. And so again, it's a web-based system. I will tell you the new version is much more cell phone friendly if you have a smartphone. That's the one downfall of the current version that we have there right now, but that will change after March 20th. It also has two parts to it. It has a row crop tool, and that will bring you clear down to county levels in Ohio. And so you can find individual county levels. If you are a vegetable crop user, there are some limitations in some of the counties. For example, I'm from Paulding County. We don't have a lot of vegetable crops. We don't have a lot of research to back that cover crop. So Paulding County doesn't show up in that vegetable crop tool selector. So you choose when you get into this system at Michigan State's website, row crop or vegetable crop tool selector. And we're going to go through the row crop today. It's very, very simple. You choose your state and your county. Some things that I'll highlight, there's some information. Oh, I forgot these pointers don't work at the TVs. Some of the things, it's very simple. You can use that on your cell phone, but again, the new version will be much easier. One of the things you do is you're going to choose a cash crop, and you'll do an estimate of a planting and a harvest date. All that shows is the windows of the different cover crops that fit in your county. There is historical 30-year data of weather that ties into this, and so running in the background is all that information. So again, these can be approximations if you're just looking at using this as a true planning. And some people need more information in season, and then you can say, okay, here's when I planted, here's what I'm doing. The other thing that I will tell you is there is an option for prevent plant, and that had been there prior to last year. Heaven forbid that we get through another 2019. I'm glad to say goodbye. But again, there is an option for prevent plant. Your crop choices, again, just typical crops, corn, or if it's seed corn, silage, soybeans, dry beans, wheat, warm season vegetable, cool season vegetable, sugar beets, grain sorghum, or milo are those different options in that tool selector. The fourth thing that you will do is you're going to choose whether your soil is, or how that drainage works. And so your options are very poorly drained, moderately well drained, excessively drained, muck, saturated, muck that is well drained. The other thing that you can look at is if you know that this farm has field tile, you can say yes or no. With that, it still gives you the option of brief, flooding up to 7 days, or long, even with that field tile option. So some of that tile might be older, but we still have that in there. And then you're going to choose goals. And this is where I think it gets difficult sometimes when this is the first time that you're using cover crops. What are the goals that you need to do? I say start simple and start with one goal that you're looking at. Changing maybe the soil health of that. Or maybe it's one thing I need to help make my farm. I know when Lee did his presentation, if you heard that intro, you have to try different things. You are all scientists in here. You're all working at that point. And so your goals, you do not have to choose 3. You can start with 1. And so those goals are, is this cover crop needed to be a nitrogen source, a nitrogen scavenger, a soil builder, an erosion fighter, that weed fighter? Is it for good grazing, quick growth, lasting residue, mechanical harvest forage value, grain seed harvest value, or is this going to be interseeded with a cash crop? What this does, the more goals you select, up to 3, it eliminates those different cover crops in a combination, and it will put numbers beside those. So it will occur with ratings, and the new tool will do this also, with 2 being good, 3 being very good, and 4 being excellent. When the numbers are lower than that, the cover crop, you can't select that to look at more options, so it kind of blacks that out or grays that out in the tool selector. So what that looks like, I've kind of showed you. All I did was just say I'm somewhat poorly drained. We're in Paulding County. We were going to plant corn on 5/25 of 2020, and I wanted just a weed fighter. What it brings down, and I know this is kind of hard to see, but beside those, there are numbers that will show up. And so those ratings show up beside that. And some people didn't pick up on that the first few times. So you look at those ratings where 4 is the better option. What the green and the yellow bars do, and then also the red, it's different things like frost seeding, or this is maybe that yellow bar, I should think or double think about planting during that time. It means that that establishment and that cover crop might not establish in that yellow time. They are set on 15-day intervals, and so you can see that some of those fall in between the bars. If we have enough research in those counties, it will fit with that. What you can do then, let me go back. Let's just say I wanted to put winter barley out. I can click on that and it will bring up an additional information. So while it shows you this very, very basic information, and I maybe just need this as a quick overview, what do I select? I can get more in depth by clicking on that crop. And so it will go by your county that you selected, what options you need. And so it goes through performance and roles. These are all drop-down menus. And so one of the things, I actually had a producer call me this past summer and said, well, I selected this, but there's no information. I'm like, oh, you got to click on each one. So once you click, if we're on the right side and we want performance and roles, it's going to drop down a whole list of things, cultural traits, advantages and disadvantages to that cover crop. Again, you use the back button. With the new interface, it actually will be a lot easier. These will drop down a little bit faster. It also has, and this is where I said these rates are not based on those practices such as equip, but it will link you to, and I will tell you there's no H2 Ohio for those of you looking at H2 Ohio, but it will link you to those different websites if you need more information on that seeding rate that might not fit in the scenario you are at. Again, this is meant just to start and help you establish those cover crops. So as we pull that down, make sure you pull down that drop-down information. Your seeding rates. If you don't understand pure live seed, there's a resource down at the bottom of the Ohio one, the new one, that will show you how to calculate pure live seed. I know last year that was a very common question that I had in some of those prevent plant situations. It also shows you seeding rates, whether it's aerial seeding, whether you're going to drill this, whether you're going to spread this cover crop on top. But the one thing I want to make sure you realize is look at those advantages and disadvantages. Some of these cover crops, and that's what I said, go back to that SARE booklet, that Managing Cover Crops Profitability. This gives you some basic information, but your plan and whatever you are planning to do and use those cover crops, it's a management plan. And so you need to be 5 steps ahead of those cover crops sometimes when you're selecting. So don't just think this is going to give you all the information. This is the starter for that. Information can be printed for your own comparison, or you can look at it on that web interface. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually go to the website for a few minutes and show you some of those different things, unless you have any basic questions right now. Okay. All right. Let's pop out of here. So this is the Michigan State website. We'll zoom in a little bit more. For the Midwest Cover Crops Council. There's lots of other things that I can tell you that are listed. The Selector tool is back here underneath the second tab. We have more specific species information. If you click on the states and provinces, when you look at that, if you are from Ohio, it's got lots of our research-based information. It links you to your NRCS websites, your local soil and water conservation districts. So those other resources are listed. One of the newest things that I will show you is this Getting Started tab, and that was added last year through a grant, through a Warner grant. And if you have questions, we have some new cover crop recipes. And so while you have the Selector tool, if you need a little bit more on management, all the different states, so Ohio has 2 out, we'll have 2 more coming yet this year. So cover crops post-corn going to soybeans and talking about using cereal rye, or post-soybeans going to corn using oats and radish. And so you click on those, it gives you just a different type of information. But back to the Selector tool. So we're going to go with row crops. And we'll go to Ohio, maybe. It's a little bit harder on this TV screen going sideways. All right, give me a county. We're just going to do this for one of your counties.
Trumbull.
Trumbull? Okay, so if we looked at this, what cash crop? We'll let you go.
Corn.
Corn? Approximate planting date?
5/1.
Okay. Your harvest date?
October.
All right. Type of drainage. So it's very poorly drained, somewhat poorly drained.
Moderately well.
Moderately well?
Yeah.
Okay. Is it tiled?
Yeah.
Okay. And is it subject to flooding?
No.
Okay. All right, so what goal are you looking for?
Erosion fighter.
An erosion fighter. Okay, and we'll start with one. And so as you can see, this green bar and this gray area, I'll just show you, for example, buckwheat on the side, I know that's hard to see at the back, has been grayed out. I can't select that, so that's not a good option. So we look at those numbers. It has the chart right here, 2 being good, 4 being excellent. If it's 0 or 1, like I said, it grays out. This gray or the green bar means reliable establishment. The yellow is freeze risk to establishment, and then that red bar doesn't mean stop, I can't do this. That's sometimes what people assume when you don't look at that key. That just means that it's an option for frost seeding. So cash crop growing period requires aerial seeding or interseeding. So let's look at those, and I will show you. There's mixes down at the bottom. It's divided into non-legumes, brassicas, and legumes. As you look at those options on the new tool, it will rank those a little bit differently. They're not divided into those classes. So what do you want to look at? If we did, there's a lot of forage there.
Sorghum Sudan grass.
All right, we'll do some sorghum Sudan grass. And so let me zoom in just a little bit more. All right, so, goodness, now I lost my mouse, I zoomed in. So again, it shows you the information you put into the tool selector as you go through that. As we looked at that, it gives you your cover crop attribute, the first thing, and so it's going to look at those. Use within the state, and I will tell you these will change with the new tool because we have that update. But the planting information, it gives you, again, seeding rate and depth. It tells you whether that seed count is in seeds per pound. Can you frost seed it? What do I need to worry about a fly-free date? So lots of different information. It will talk about inoculation type if it is needed. It has some termination methods, and so usually this one will freeze in the winter. And so some of the different programs we have in Ohio. Additionally, performance and roles. You know, if you wanted to look at this, is it a good legume source? No. And so how much total nitrogen would I get from this? I'm not getting really any nitrogen based on research. And so looking at that dry matter, about how much dry matter, again, you know your farm, and so not every single one of you will use this the same way. Cultural traits, again, it just gives you some information based on that managing cover crops profitability. Advantages and some disadvantages. And so it's fairly easy to use when we go through that. But again, it's a tool that is there for any of you. So with that, I can run another scenario, or we can ask for questions now. This is a short presentation. I know we're right before lunch, so we'll make sure you're out of here a few minutes early or on time. But what questions do you have for me?
What was the website for that again?
Sure. It is MCCC, 3 C's, M with 3 C's, .msu.edu. Pull that back up. If you want as long as you go and you can find it on there, but if you put Selector tool, that gets you right to the start page. Good question. What other questions do you have?
When you input your goals, are they ranked 1, 2, 3, or is it just 3? Okay.
It will rank them by what you chose as your first goal, second goal, and third goal. And so you will see additional numbers. Go back into the tool selector. Let me hit back. Now that I've zoomed way in. If I add another goal up here, let's just say we pulled nitrogen source. Okay, it's going to start to gray those off, but it will show you the second one. It comes in as pink, and the first one is right there. And so you want a combination where, for example, sweet clover in that situation gives you a 2 and a 4. So when you look at those two goals, so again, you want those higher goals to match the more and up to 3 goals on that. Good question. Yes.
Is there anything about chemicals we use in crop growing?
So not in this current version with the chemicals. The newest version, when we did all the new information, we had a cohort group that worked on this. It actually talks about some of those, and that's going to be in potential disadvantage. And so it will talk about, be careful of, this chemical, or if you've had, this use. It talks through some of those, and some of it will refer you to the bottom to say, go here for the rest of the information, because we wanted those sheets to be one page to print those off so you can make those comparisons.